process of how he was working through that with the Spirit, I wrote down how his actions and his demeanor were so different from everyone around him, even though they were all believers. Because he stood in his faith, he reacted totally differently. The first thing I noted was that he listened. It is one thing I know that the Spirit gives us, eyes to see like God wants us to, ears to hear, and that was how he started. He listened. He heard the situation for what it truly was. Then he asked a question. And to me, it's as if he was the calm one, the calm in that storm. And then he focused and he proceeded in faith. And to me, that is what stood out when you told this story, was just how the Spirit did move through David.
Yeah, I love the part actually that we didn't really get to dive into today, but David, when he began to ask that question, there was like 3 occurrences. He heard first of all, and then he considered the reward, and then he turns and he asks again, and it is confirmed again. So, when you talk about that he listened, he truly was analyzing and thinking about the situation, assessing it, and then he let his faith really be the one that guided him forward, right?
Yes.
Because he had, David had already, actually in chapter 16, David was anointed king. And he wasn't yet time for him to assume that place, right? But he had already been anointed king. He had already been chosen by God. So God's Spirit was resting upon him, and he knew and understood that, knew who he was in God, and knew that God was going to be with him if he entered this battle.
And I think that is a huge thing, that when we do have that relationship, as you talked about with God, it helps us define who we are in that relationship with God, and it helps us stand firm when we are facing things in our lives that feel like a Goliath.
That's right.
And that may be an ebb and flow in your life. You may have times where you may feel like, I'm on top of the world, and then all of a sudden it changes and you're looking at this giant in your path. And David's story is just a good example that it's still the same now.
That's right.
As long as we stand firm in our relationship with God, not like you said, how we know about God, right? Because we're all going to be a little different. So that's why it's so crucial to have that intimate relationship with Him. Yeah. And I love that you integrated that in today.
I love the fact that, Israel had all of these experiences, right? I mean, God had been with Israel, right? I mean, from the parting of the Red Sea to bringing them into this place of the Promised Land where He was going to bring them. So God had just been with them the whole time. And David knew and understood that. And that was because ultimately his relationship with God was so strong, was so settled, that he then could easily begin to speak with words of faith and see himself beyond the current situation that he was already conquered or had defeated Goliath. Before he ever stepped foot on the battlefield, in his mind, he already knew that God was going to win the battle.
He was with him, and the effect that had.
That's right.
Right? I mean, it affected us till this day.
That's right.
That's the thing, is like, if we have that relationship and we stand firm in our faith, how many people are we interacting with that it affects down the road? And I think that that's a huge part of discipleship here at Victory Hill and what we do, and why you all break these down for us, because it relates to us now.
That's right.
God is the same then as He was now. We say it, but when you're living it, and you're learning and you're growing, that is where these things come in so crucial. And today just made me smile because I was just like, this is so good.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things that I think come into our life that can cause us to begin to submit to that thing, right?
Yes.
And begin to fear that, let it control our
and
life.
Fear is something the devil's going to use huge.
It is a weapon.
Yes, and that's why I'm so grateful for you all breaking this down. And for those of you watching with us, we want you to know that that's why we're here at Victory Hill. That's why we ask you to join us, use that digital connect card. That's what we're here for. So we're a community, and we're so blessed to have Pastor Travis with us. We're so blessed to have this church and to have you all as a part of our family too. So we hope that you guys tune back in next week. It's going to be another good week, right?
That's right.
All right.
Thank you for
see you
joining
guys
us.
next week.